This is an overview of the final project for Lit 100. When we look at this project, we look at the goals that align with the course goals, which include understanding and recognizing the themes and fundamental elements of literature, and then being able to explain the larger significance and importance of the elements to the story. You should be able to explain how the literature affects the culture and identity. And then finally, the writing of introductions, transitions, conclusions that meaningfully communicate your message. So let's look a little closer. First, at the introduction. There are 4 areas that you need to include in your introduction, and they include the text itself, identify the title and the author. You want to share the rationale, which is why you were drawn to the story, what connection you have to this piece of literature. You want to identify the message, such as the story unfolds to impact the well-meaning yet suffocating social and intellectual restrictions placed on women. And then finally, you need a thesis statement. Yellow wallpaper, Gilman used powerful symbolism to call out the impact of patriarchal society on women. It's full of symbols, additional focus on description and imagery. Those 3 elements necessary to support the argument of the thesis. When we look at the body paragraphs, again, we look for 5 elements. First, the topic sentence should introduce the element that you're going to explore. One of the first elements introduced to the story is the nursery. And then you'll use evidence that is directly taken from the story to support your argument. You want to integrate that evidence. One of the first things about the room was that the room was behind bars, and later in the story, they're referenced again as her anxiety increases and she exclaims, and see how that is a perfect integration into, I'm getting angry enough to do something desperate, to jump out the windows. So it's all tied to the symbolism of the room itself. And you need to respond and explain that concept. Her husband believes that what he's doing is best for her, isolating her in a room with bars on the windows, discouraging her from mental stimulus. And then finally, a transition sentence that says, throughout the story, the nursery is placed in, she is trapped with nothing to do but write in secret, obsess about the wallpaper in her own private prison, which leads us to the next paragraph, which would talk about description. Finally, we move to the conclusion and we look for a restatement of that thesis. Gilman uses the room and the wallpaper as a multi-layered symbol representing the oppression of women. We look for the context of the story. What has it to do with the greater world itself? Successful social change so often comes from art, and that's why literature like Yellow Wallpaper is so valuable to society. When we talk about culture, we look at what a great distance women have come since Gilman's time. And then identity. American women are more free than we've ever been. So all those elements have been discussed, have been touched upon in the conclusion. Let's take a quick look at the rubric and see how that aligns with what we just reviewed. We note that the introduction is worth 28.4%, and it includes the text, the message, the rationale, and the thesis statement. As we move to the body, it's worth 37.5, and that should include a topic sentence, evidence, integration, analysis, and transition. And then finally, that conclusion, 28.4, which would include the restatement of the thesis, a conclusion that includes the context of the story in the overall picture of the theme or the subject in the world, and then cultural significance and identity. So before you submit your paper, please be sure to use the final essay checklist in the course. Check your MLA format. Make sure that you cite in text parenthetically with the page number and author, and include a works cited page. And if you need help, contact your instructor.